Hello everyone. Minto Reforms of 1909. In October 1906, a group of Muslim elites called the Simla Deputation, led by the Aga Khan, met Lord Minto and demanded separate electorates for the Muslims and representation in excess of their numerical strength in view of the value of contribution Muslims were making to defense of the empire. The same group quickly took over the Muslim League, initially floated by Nawab Salimullah of Dhaka, along with Nawabs Mohsin ul Mulk and Wakar ul Mulk in December 1906. The Muslim League intended to preach loyalty to the empire and to keep the Muslim intelligentsia away from the Congress. Gopal Krishna Gokhale, who also went to England to meet the Secretary of State for India, John Morley, to put Congress demands for self-governing system similar to that in the other British colonies. The reforms. The Viceroy Lord Minto and the Secretary of State for India John Morley agreed that some reforms were due to do so as to placate the moderates as well as the Muslims. They worked out a set of measures that came to be known as the Morley-Minto Reforms that translated into Indian Councils Act of 1909. The elective principle was recognized for the non-official membership of the councils in India. Indians were allowed to participate in the election of various legislative councils, though on the basis of class and community. For the first time, separate electorates for Muslims for election to the central council was established, a most detrimental step for India. The number of elected members in the Imperial Legislative Council and the Provincial Legislative Council was increased. In the provincial councils, non-official majority was introduced, but since some of these non-officials were nominated and not elected, the overall non-elected majority remained. According to Sumit Sarkar, in the Imperial Legislative Council, of the total 69 members, 37 were to be the officials, and of the 32 non-officials, 5 were to be nominated. Of the 27 elected non-officials, 8 seats were reserved for the Muslims under separate electorates. Only Muslims could vote here for the Muslim candidates, while 4 seats were reserved for the British capitalists, 2 for the landlords, and 13 seats came under general electorate. The elected members were to be indirectly elected. The local bodies were to elect an electoral college, which in turn would elect members of provincial legislatures, who in turn would elect members of the central legislature. Besides separate electorates for the Muslims, representation in excess of the strength of their population was accorded to the Muslims. Also, the income qualification for Muslim voters was kept lower than that for Hindus. Powers of legislatures both at the center and in provinces were enlarged, and the legislatures could now pass resolutions which may or may not be accepted, ask questions and supplementaries, vote separate items in the budget, though the budget as a whole could not be voted upon. One Indian was to be appointed to the Viceroy's Executive Council. Satyendra Sinha was the first Indian to be appointed in 1909. Evaluation. The reforms of 1909 afforded no answer to the Indian political problem. Lord Morley made it clear that the colonial self-government as demanded by the Congress was not suitable for India, and he was against the introduction of parliamentary or responsible government in India. He said if it could be said that this chapter of reforms led directly or indirectly to the establishment of a parliamentary system in India, I for one would have nothing at all to do with it. The constitutional reforms were in fact aimed at dividing the nationalist ranks by confusing the moderates and at checking the growth of unity among Indians through the obnoxious instrument of separate electorates. The government aimed at rallying the moderates and the Muslims against the rising tide of nationalism. The officials and the Muslim leaders often talked of the entire community when they talked of the separate electorates, but in reality it meant the appeasement of just a small section of the Muslim elite. Besides, the system of election was too indirect, and it gave the impression of infiltration of legislators through a number of sieves. And while parliamentary forms were introduced, no responsibility was considered, which sometimes led to thoughtless and irresponsible criticism of the government. Only some members like Gokhale put to constructive use of the opportunity to debate in the councils by demanding universal primary education, attacking repressive policies, and drawing attention to the plight of indentured labor and Indian workers in South Africa. What the reforms of 1909 gave to the people of the country was a shadow rather than substance. The people had demanded self-government, but what they were given instead was benevolent despotism. Like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you. Bye.